One Nation, One Election bill, which the government today introduced in the Lok Sabha. It's an ambitious one. The government's argument is that in India, we have elections for far too often, virtually every 6 months. There is some state election or local body election that's happening. And the government's contention is this impedes or curtails actual governance and it leads to politicking. They have backed the Kovind Committee recommendations to move towards simultaneous elections starting from 2034. The opposition is opposed to this tooth and nail, saying that this is anti-democratic, anti-federal, and this will kill regional parties. So the question is, own up or one nation, one poll? Is this an idea whose time has come, or is it a non-starter because the government does not have the two-thirds majority required to pass it in Parliament?
I beg to move for leave to introduce the Constitution 129th Amendment Bill.
जिस दिन हमारी इकॉनमी 10 और 10:30 और 11 के बीच में पहुंच जाएगी, इकॉनमी की लाइन में जो 3 या 4 देश खड़े होंगे, उसमें उस पंक्ति में हमारा देश भी खड़ा होगा।
हमारी पार्टी शिवसेना और हमारे नेता एकनाथ जी शिंदे साहब की ओर से हम इस बिल का पूरी तरीके से समर्थन करते हैं।
This bill will finish off regional parties. This bill is only brought in to massage the ego of the supreme leader.
ये इस बिल में कहीं भी आघात नहीं हो रहा है, कुछ भी नहीं हो रहा है इसमें। जो बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर में कहीं भी कोई छेड़छाड़ नहीं की जा रही।
All right, so one nation, one election. Is it feasible? Is it possible? Is it an idea whose time has come, or is it simply a non-starter or a pipe dream? Our political panel is still with us here on Brass Tacks. Dr. Shama, Mohamed, let me ask you first. The government's contention is, and you heard the law minister who moved the bill today, that 80% of the responses from political parties favored simultaneous elections. The Kovind Committee spoke to 47 political parties, 32 of whom backed simultaneous polls. Only 15 parties said no, including the Congress Party. Top legal, election, business experts, organizations like CII, FICCI, ASSOCHAM, etc. are all backing the proposal on the simple logic that you will save cost and it is not anti-democratic. Why is the Congress Party opposed to it, despite the fact that from 1952 to 1967, during Pandit Nehru's rule for 15 years, we had simultaneous elections. So if it was not anti-democratic then, how can it be anti-democratic now?
So first and foremost, at that point of time, you did not have this number of parties. There was just the Congress Party and a few others. Now, the 32 parties, which you said correctly, is those who are aligned with the NDA, and the 15 are those who are with the India Alliance. And this is the reason why one is going against it is, let's understand one thing. You have the Vidhan Sabha and the Lok Sabha together. But the local body elections, if you see the report of the COVID, is after 100 days. Once you have to, after these 100 days, after they finish this, in 100 days, you have to get all the polling agents, 15 million polling agents, you need to get them trained, get the polling booths back. That is point number one. Point number two, in this particular report, it says that the government falls. For example, in a Vidhan Sabha, in assembly, suppose, let's say we go for this in 29. In 29, around 33, the government, 32, the government falls. 34 will be the, 34 is the election. Then they say that you can go in for a midterm election, but that again will happen after that midterm election. In 34, you will have again another election. So for a year, there will be an election, all right? You will have to, the candidate has to spend money on that election. Every polling agent, everything will be involved. So I fail to understand, how do you cut down costs when you will have a midterm election when a state assembly falls? And the other thing is, what we have to notice is that this period of it, which is being so elongated,
okay,
there will be various changes happening. And also when you have the Lok Sabha and the Vidhan Sabha, the national parties will go along, especially BJP now, which is in power. Whereas the federalism, which our structure is based on federalism, how does that continue with this sort of thing? And the cost of the EVMs, it is 10,000 crores every 15 years you have to spend. So I fail to understand how are you going to cut costs
Okay.
when you have one election.
So let me ask Pradeep Bhandari here. The opposition's contention is the bill tinkers with the basic structure of the constitution. You're expressly barred from doing so in the Keshwananda Bharati judgment. The bill is against federalism. It impacts the terms of the assemblies. Parliament has no role in the terms of the assemblies. It needs ratification from the state assemblies if you want to change the structure of state assemblies and local body elections. Also, the bill is beyond the legislative competence of the Lok Sabha because terms of state assemblies cannot be curtailed by Lok Sabha. This is anti-federal. We have tens of regional parties and only effectively two national parties, Congress and BJP, who stand to benefit from simultaneous elections. All regional parties will be at the receiving end.
Zakka, let me argue this on the basis of constitutional morality and past precedent and certain facts. Now, point number one, let us admit this, and the reality is that the vision of the constitution makers was to have one nation, one election. This is why 3 successive elections happened as one nation, one election. Even in 1967, only for pure political reasons, one nation, one election, the entire cycle was disrupted. After that, you had the Supreme Court ensuring that no party can impose Article 356 and abuse Article 356 like the Congress party has done. That is point number one. So the reservation of imposing Article 356 for political purposes like Jawaharlal Nehru, Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi had done completely sets aside because the Supreme Court has imposed strict guidelines. Point number one. Point number two, in the 1967 election, which was the last one nation, one election, there were 6 places where the Congress party, despite being the monolithic party at that time, could not win. That was, if I recall very correctly, it was Odisha, it was Uttar Pradesh, it was Kerala, it was Bengal and the other 2 provinces. So even in 1967, when the Congress was a monolithic party with not many regional parties being present, Congress could not win larger provinces. Go back to 1932, the franchisee committee report, where the provincial election and the assembly elections happened at the same time. Not a single parliamentary committee, not a single law commission, not a single election commission recommendation has recommended against one nation, one election since 1983.
No,
I have the recommendation.
Pradeep, once again, let's get to the brass tacks.
Yes.
Because this show is called Brass Tacks. One second, ma'am.
Yes.
You know, ultimately, for a constitutional amendment, you need 2/3 of the members present and voting. Today, when the bill was introduced, right, 269 NDA MPs were there and voted for. You have 294 in this 18th Lok Sabha. Not even all of your MPs came and voted. How are you going to get 2/3, which is 362?
Zakka, we have the past track record. We have the past track record of even abrogating Article 370, and this bill will be passed through consensus and constitutional law. We are not like Indira Gandhi, who disimposed the quorum, which was tried to disimpose the quorum which was there in Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, where at least 10% of the members have to be present. So all the constitutional norms have to be followed. In fact, it's a further lengthy process, Zakka, where it has to be ratified with more than 50% plus of state assemblies. So that is the part of procedure. I am talking about the intent of it. The intent of it is to reimpose what the constitution makers had thought about. And allow me to just reiterate one thing. When the second report on the elections in 1957 had happened, where the Congress party was in power, where all political parties agreed to 3 primary principles. A, all the polls should be held simultaneously without any long break. At that time in 1957, it was not the BJP, it was the Congress party. B, all the election has to be completed within 15 days. This is the Congress party. So the Congress party in an all-party meeting in 1957 said, have elections together. So what is the problem now?
Okay. So let me ask Pradeep Bharti and Mr. Reddy of the TDP, since they represent regional parties. Mr. Bharti, the BJP's contention is this is not anti-regional because no amendment is going to be made to either the union list or the state list or the concurrent list. They also say that this does not tamper with the basic structure of the constitution, which is arguably just the division of power between the various branches of government, executive, legislature and judiciary. That parliament can make laws about state assemblies. Most notably, most recently, you had the 371, which was made by parliament, which involved a state legislature. And the government's contention is also that Article 327 of the Constitution allows provisions, allows power to the Lok Sabha to amend the Constitution to have simultaneous elections. How do you respond to this, Mr. Bharti?
Thank you, Jacob, and good evening to all. In democracy, one, me, myself, and ek akela sab pe bhari mindset itself is undemocratic. Democracy favors plurality, and it won't stop at one nation, one election. Then BJP will go ahead and one nation, one party, and then go ahead with one nation, one leader. And that leads to a dictatorship. In a way, another conspiracy like poll rigging to destroy the Constitution of India. There are three important reasons given behind one nation, one election is. One is cost saving, second is save time, and third is policy paralysis will be avoided. Now let me come to the point one, which is cost. The estimated cost for 2014 is 1.35 lakh crore as published by India Today, India TV and other. And more, approximately 50% is spent by the BJP itself. That comes to 60,000 crores. So let first walk the talk. Whatever you are suggesting, first reduce. Let me ask the richest party of India to follow what they are saying. If you want to spend, reduce the cost, do it right now. Don't linger it like a women reservation bill, which we have done for another, put that into another 10 years bucket. And second thing, there is a limit of per candidate, that is 95 lakhs to be spent by the each MP candidate. And there is no limit of political party spending. So point number two, do that first. The richest party doing the excellent expenditure, stop it there, and then decide that what is your total expenditure that you are doing 60,000 crores of spending. So first do that. Second point about the saving of timing. You cannot do a by-poll in a single phase and you are expecting to do assembly and Lok Sabha election and also the local. If I am right on that, altogether it seems a far-fetched idea. Nothing like you have done in the past to distract the public from the core issues of and the promises you have made, whether it's in unemployment, inflation, farmers issue, black money, smart cities. I can go on and on.
Let me ask Mr. Deepak Reddy of the TDP, as a regional party representative, and of course in Andhra Pradesh for the last many election cycles, we've had simultaneous assembly and national elections in the state of Andhra Pradesh. It used not to be that case before 1999. I think from 1999 onwards, there were simultaneous elections in Andhra Pradesh. So obviously you're in support of the idea. But how do you respond, Mr. Reddy, to the charge that ultimately when you have simultaneous elections, national issues and national parties will take precedence? Ultimately, the people who will get lost in this contest are regional parties like yours, because the regional will always be subsumed by the national, because there's a general election and within that general election there are elections for various state assemblies. How do you respond to that?
Zakka, we had a detailed discussion a year ago on this subject in the party, and we were aware that if one nation, one election comes, it is at a disadvantage of the regional parties. That was the stand of Telugu Desam party. But if you see, Chandrababu Naidu ji of recently has announced his support for the one nation, one election. So I think parties from around the country, smaller parties and regional parties, should take this as an example, because although it is slightly at a disadvantage for the regional parties, for the larger interest of the nation, Chandrababu Naidu ji has taken this decision to go with this. So this is the kind of positive attitude, I think, what most of the people should have in the country, most of the parties should have, because we have clear-cut reasons. If you look at the costing, I read some report which says that there would be a 30,000 crore saving for the government itself. And for the candidates in Andhra Pradesh, if you see, in the last general elections, an MLA spent between 40 to 60 crores per MLA segment. So we have to come up with such ideas to reform our election process also. Then we look Reddy, at
the cost, the impediment on cost or spending will still not come into place even if you have simultaneous elections, right? For that you need laws which say that candidates can't spend beyond a certain amount or political parties can't spend beyond a certain amount. They will still end up spending.
That's true. That's true. At least if both the MP and MLA comes together, they just pay once. So somewhat it is better. So see, more importantly, Zakka, I think this is important because you have certain factors from DMK who are giving anti-social comments or anti-national comments, you can say. So once we have a one nation, one election, then the national interests come ahead of the regional issues. So looking at the times, yes, we definitely have to see, and there are some places where the voter turnout is less than 50%. So considering all this, it is a positive step. Why should we stick to certain rules and say that, we have to do the old way itself? Whatever makes sense and whatever is good for us, we should look at it. One last thing, Zakka. One last thing. I take a bet. if we run a polygraph test on Rahul Gandhi ji on this, he will in his heart he will definitely also be pitching for one nation, one election, because he knows, we can have one grand defeat once, and then he can do his favorite job by traveling around the world and partying.
This is not
So,
done.
so, so
Personal
even-
with the caveat of no personal attacks, let's ask Shama Mohamed to respond. Yeah.
I have huge respect for Chandrababu Naidu, and I will not attack him. I will not reach your level. I'm sorry to say that. This is very cheap on your part. I never expected TD to be at this level, this cheap level. Now, let me tell you one thing, Zakka. This year itself, we had Maharashtra and Haryana. You know that Maharashtra and Haryana were supposed to be together, but they put it separately, and they said the reason was festivals and security issues. I still remember, because Jammu and Kashmir was clubbed with Haryana. So if you couldn't do this much here, okay, you talk a lot, you have a committee, everything. If you couldn't do this much, you couldn't put these elections together, the 6 months, you could have put Maharashtra, Haryana, Jammu and Kashmir and Jharkhand together to show us that we could do one nation, one poll. The other thing is, even in Jharkhand, you had 2 phases. You could have had 1 phase. So we have not only multiple, we have to get all the states together, one. And this time, Maharashtra and Lok Sabha had 5 phases. So in West Bengal, 7 phases. You also have phases. So how can you do this when you're unable to do this, when you have to showcase something? You can talk. And the other thing is, they got also from the public a lot of support, they say.
Okay.
They went to the public. No, let me finish this. This was done in Hindi and English. It's there in the report. Nothing in regional language. So how do we know? How did a Tamil Nadu respond? How did a Kerala respond? How did a West Bengal respond? A Tripura respond? And Gujarat also. See, you didn't have anything in local. In English and Hindi, you have asked people. So that is not fair to a country which has multiple regional languages. So
Okay.
my question to them today, show it to us that you can do it by conducting next year's election all in one.
Respond
The
to
coming
that
elections
point. Respond to
every
that
year,
point, Pradeep
conduct
Bhandari.
it together. 26 plus Kerala, West Bengal,
Maharashtra,
all of them in
Jharkhand,
one shot.
Haryana have always polled together. This time you are not able to even hold 3 state elections together because of paucity of security forces.
Well, I'll answer that, but just 2 small rebuttals. It's too rich from the Samajwadi Party to speak about the women reservation bill when it is the party which has historically opposed the women reservation bill along with Lalu Prasad Yadav. This is late Mulayam Singh Yadav ji quoting that Samajwadi Party is against the women reservation bill, and this is what they did in 2013. So first look inside your house. Number 2, Shama Mohamed speaking about cheap things is again too rich, particularly when Shama Mohamed on October 9, 2024, 11:16 AM after the Congress party lost Haryana said only the Muslims vote for the Congress party, nobody else. This is a respect for the constitution. Now let me answer your argument. Shama, why are you getting so agitated when I am quoting your tweet?
I'm not debating with kindergarten children.
No, you are a kindergarten person who comes and who after losing an election start crying like, a small baby. Don't cry on the debate. I was listening to you. Don't cry on the debate. Have some respect. At least respect Rahul Gandhi.
Let's argue on the substance.
No, I am arguing on a tweet. I just quoted a tweet. If she tweets kindergarten stuff, well, good enough.
Let's argue on the
I am
substance.
arguing on the substance.
No. Please answer the question that. One second, Dr. Mohamed. 1 second, please. The question that you asked needs to be answered.
I am answering.
If 3 state elections can't be held together, how are you going to hold Lok Sabha and state assembly elections together?
I do believe that I'm not like the Congress party which has more faith in Hindenburg and agencies from abroad. I have faith in my election commission which could conduct simultaneous election in 1952, 57 and consecutively in 62. So it has done it. Even the 67 election, even though it was a simultaneous election, was a multi-phase election. So are you telling me that a body which could do it at the time when there was no technological prowess will not do it now?
I got to wrap
Shama
up.
Mohamed ji, aapki loyalty
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all our political party representatives. I want to go across to a special guest who's also joining us now on this. T.S. Krishnamurthy is former Chief Election Commissioner of India. Thank you very much, sir, for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. Do you think this idea of one nation, one election is the way forward? Is it desirable? Is it feasible, most importantly?
Well, as an administrator, I always welcome it. It's easier to manage. It has got many advantages, financial as well as managerial advantages. So it's certainly a desirable proposition. But then there are practical difficulties in implementing it. So we have to take adequate care to ensure that there is at least a reasonable consensus or reasonable acceptability among many people.
So what according to you, sir,
rather.
what according to you, sir, in your learned opinion, would be the biggest impediments or the hurdles or the practical difficulties that one would have to encounter if you have to implement one nation, one poll, if it were to become a reality?
The administrative challenges are particularly to maintain law and order during that period properly when you have election of such a large scale. So that is the first proposition that the Election Commission has to ensure that the elections are conducted. Personally, I feel that each day, the election should be in one day in most of the states except some problem states where you have either terrorist or violence prone areas.
Okay.
But as far as possible, if you can ensure that the election is held in one day for each of the major, most of the states rather, then as an administrator, I would be very comfortable in dealing with that. Secondly, the enforcement of model code of conduct, etc., that we have to make extra arrangements to ensure that the implementation of the model code of conduct is effectively done. For that, we may have to have more observers to watch what is happening around them. So these are some of the issues, and then financially it is probably good because when election is conducted simultaneously, the election expenditure is shared between the center and the states.
Okay.
But when it is done separately, suppose the parliament election is conducted separately, the entire expenditure of the parliament election will be borne by the center. And as far as the states elections are concerned, each of the states expenditure, the respective state will have to foot the bill. At least a share of it they have to foot it. So there are certain practical issues to be dealt with, but as I said, as an administrator, I welcome a simultaneous polls.
I do also want to ask you, many state governments, particularly opposition ruled state governments, many regional parties are apprehensive about one nation, one election. They are saying it's an attack on federalism, it's anti-democratic, anti-constitution. Is their fear valid or is it overblown?
I am conscious of that objection. It is to some extent maybe even true, but then what you look at the past experience, in many states, the voters have voted differently for the center and for the states differently.
Correct.
There has been no, a mental pressure on the voters to vote only for a particular party, either for the center or for the states. They have their own freedom. It is true that in the campaign, etc., the dominant issues may be the federal issues and not the state issues. That could be possible. But that's where I think some kind of a reconciliation is desirable. Politically, these objections are raised, but you will be surprised that there is a parliamentary standing committee report where they have said it is ideal to have simultaneous poll, but in view of the practical difficulties, one of the suggestions made by that committee is to have elections once in 2.5 years or 2 years, as the case may be.
Yeah.
But all the same, as I said, there are many advantages in having a simultaneous election, particularly from the point of view of expenditure and from the point of view of administration.
Okay, Mr. T.S. Krishnamurthy, former Chief Election Commissioner of India, thank you very much for joining us here on CNN News 18 with your thoughts on whether one nation, one election is possible, whether it's feasible, and most importantly, whether it is desirable.